Welcome to our online Sunday services at First Unitarian Church of St. Louis. Hello, my name is Michael Hunter, he, him, his, and I'm glad to see you all here this morning. I especially want to welcome any visitors or newcomers. If you are new to our congregation, please fill out a newcomer form found at the link in the chat window. In the chat, you can also find a few other useful links, including today's order of service, our YouTube channel where service recordings are posted, and information about our religious education program for families with children. Automated closed captioning is also available for those who would find it helpful. It can be accessed by clicking on the closed caption button at the bottom of your screen and then show subtitle. I have one announcement this morning. You're invited to stay after the service for a special presentation sponsored by Towards Justice on investment management practices that incorporate environmental, social, and governance factors. Guest speaker Tim Brennan served as Treasurer and Chief Financial Officer of the Unitarian Universalist Association from 2006 to 2019 and advises organizations on responsible investing solutions. He will share with us his wealth of knowledge that can be used in your personal and work decision-making and in our congregation. Simply stay in the main room during coffee hour for this meaningful presentation. Now, since one of the most important aspects of worship is being present in community, we invite you to continue this moment of welcome by switching to gallery view and turning on your webcams to wave at each other. We're keeping everyone muted, but feel free to type your greetings in the chat. It's so good to see you all. Now, please turn off your webcams again and feel free to return to speaker view. Welcome to this religious community where we affirm the dignity and freedom of all who enter. Here, we seek to live together in relationship and respect so that we may embrace and celebrate our differences. Our religious values invite us to a shared journey of truth and meaning. Sincerity and connection guide our religious community and call us into deeper association with ourselves and our world. Welcome. We are glad you are part of our community this morning. Now, please enjoy Andante Sostenuto by Charles Marie Widor, performed by our wonderful own organist, Earl Naylor.
Good morning. I am the Reverend Kim Mason, she, her, hers, and I serve this congregation as minister. It is good to be with you on this beautiful spring morning. Thank you for joining us after a rainy day. Our theme for the month of April is becoming. Today, we think about how we become more wholehearted with ourselves. Our opening words come from the Reverend Gretchen Haley. Every little thing that breaks your heart is welcome here. We'll make space for it. Give it its due time and praise for the wanting it represents, the longing for something more. We promise no magic, no making it all better, but offer only this circle of trust, this human community that remembers, though imperfectly, that sings and prays. This gathering that loves, though not yet enough. We're still practicing, after all, still learning, still in need of help and partners, still becoming able to receive all this beauty and all these gifts we each bring. Come, let us worship together. Please join in singing our hymn of the month, Lo, the Day of Days is Here, a seasonal Easter song from the former First Unitarian minister, Frederick Hosmer.
We light our chalice this morning with these words adapted from Richard Gilbert. Do not let the incompleteness weigh on your spirit. Do not despair that imperfection marks your every day. Do not fear that we are still in the making. Let us instead be grateful that the world is still to be created. Let us give thanks that we can be more than we are. Let us celebrate the power of the incomplete, for life is always unfinished business.
My name is Lily Rappaport, the Interim Director of Religious Education. Today's story will help us understand the complex feeling of shame and that making mistakes are just a part of life. They don't define us. The Awfulizer, Learning to Overcome the Shame Game by Kristen Marr. The first time I met the Awfulizer is a day I'll never forget. I learned why he got his name, because he wants to make you feel awful about yourself. I was riding the bus home with my sister Lucy, and I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around and looked into the eyes of a strange monster. He was fluffy, with a giant nose and a black hat on his head, and breath that smelled like pickles. "Hello, James," he muttered. "I'm the Awfulizer. Terrible to meet you." Awfulizer? How weird. I looked at Lucy, and she didn't seem to notice or hear him, so I turned back around in my seat. I must be seeing things. There was another tap on my shoulder. I turned around to see the Awfulizer just inches from my face. "Remember when you got in trouble in class today? The teacher called you out in front of the whole class. Now everyone knows you're a bad kid." I didn't remember that it was so embarrassing. I started to wonder if what the Awfulizer said was true. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was bad. As soon as I had that thought, it seemed like the Awfulizer grew a little bigger. That night, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't fall asleep. Every time I closed my eyes, the Awfulizer would appear and show me something I had done wrong that day. He reminded me of when I pretended not to hear my teacher in class, and when I laughed at Samuel after he fell down while playing tag, and when I told Lucy she was the most annoying sister ever. Over and over, the Awfulizer reminded me of the bad things I had done, and the more terrible I felt, the bigger the Awfulizer seemed to grow. The next day in class, I didn't say much at school. Every time I started to raise my hand in class or talk to my friends, there was a tap on my shoulder. I didn't have to turn around. I know it was the Awfulizer reminding me I might say the wrong thing, so I said nothing at all. As the weeks went on, my sister began to wonder why I wasn't playing with her. My dad told me I didn't seem to be smiling as much as normal. My teachers asked me why I wasn't raising my hand in class. Everyone kept asking if I was okay, but I didn't know what to say. No one seemed to see the Awfulizer or hear him, and every time I said I was fine, the Awfulizer got bigger. Soon, the Awfulizer had grown so big that he was all I could see. He whispered to me every night, telling me all the things I had done wrong because he said I was wrong. I was so tired of hearing him, but I didn't know how to get the awfulizer to stop. Then one night, my mom and dad came into my room. They both gave me a big hug. "James, we love you so very much," Mom said, "and we know something is bothering you." The awfulizer began tapping me on the shoulder. I started to tell my parents I was fine, but I knew it was a lie. I wanted so badly to get rid of the awfulizer, so I gathered all my courage and took a deep breath and told them everything. I feel like there's a monster in my head, and all he does is say awful things to me. He tells me all the things I'm doing wrong and how I am wrong, and it makes me feel sad and scared. My parents listened to everything I said, and as I talked out loud about what had been happening, I saw the awfulizer began to shrink. My mom and dad told me how they get visits from the awfulizer too, and that I would be surprised just how many people he tries to mess with. "The awfulizer and I go way back," Mom said. "It took a long time to realize that I may make a mistake, but that doesn't mean I am a mistake. When you know you've done something wrong, you apologize, learn from it, and let it go." "We all have different ways to fight the awfulizer and his shame game," Dad said. "Talking to us about him is a great way. In fact, when you talk about how you're feeling, it gives you a superpower. It makes you the awesomeizer. When you tell someone the truth about how you're feeling, it makes the awfulizer lose his power and he can't play the shame game. Another way to be an awesomizer is to remind yourself of the good things about you. You are brave, strong, smart, and funny. And even when you don't feel any of those things, you still matter." "If you remind yourself who you are every day," Mom said, "that awfulizer won't stand a chance. Look around, where is he now?" I looked, and I couldn't believe what I saw. The whole time my parents and I had been talking, the awfulizer had continued to shrink. The awfulizer had shrunk so much he was barely the size of my pillow. "It's about time he noticed me," the awfulizer grumbled now. But I didn't hear what he had said next, because just then my mom threw a blanket over me and began tickling me. My laughter drowned out the voice of the awfulizer, and when I looked around, he was gone. Poof! The awfulizer still tries to visit me sometimes and make me play the shame game, but now any time I feel him tapping me on the shoulder, I turn into the awesomizer. I talk to my friends about how I'm feeling. I talk to my parents and laugh about the silly things the awfulizer said to them when they were kids. I talk to my teachers and school counselor because they've had lots of practice helping kids learn to tune out the awfulizer, and I talk to him directly and tell him that the shame game is for the birds. And most importantly, I talk to myself. I remind myself who I am. I am brave, strong, smart, and funny. I am James the Awesomizer. The awfulizer might be big and persistent, but up against the awesomizer, he will always lose.
May we all find ways to be awesomizers in our lives and put an end to the shame game. Throughout our lives, we are constantly becoming. One of the ways that we increase our capacity for wholehearted living is by sharing our joys and concerns each week. This week, a joyful welcome to two new members. Kelly Jones and Tom Finnan both recently signed the membership book. Yay! Welcome. This week, we celebrate Genevieve Francois, daughter of Sarah and Joe Francois, who was named a national winner in the Quill and Scroll 2021 International Writing, Photo, and Multimedia Contest in column writing. Congratulations, Jen. And we congratulate Abby Lower and Ralph Noyes on the birth of a baby boy this weekend, Levon Lower Noyes. So much joy. As we pause in a moment of quiet reflection, I invite you to type any sorrows or concerns you are experiencing into the group chat box. Healing prayers for a friend with a heart condition. The loss of a wonderful friend after 102 years of joyful life. Healing prayers for an uncle diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. Prayers for a friend's cancer that has returned. And prayers for a friend who lost a brother. Concern for a brother recovering at home from COVID. And prayers for a mother-in-law and struggle with a family member's depression and isolation. And worry for a friend who broke her hip and had surgery and is now in rehab. And thoughts for a family in India dealing with the new Indian variant of COVID. We hold these sorrows with tenderness and compassion. May they be lighter because they are shared. As a community, we also share our joys with one another. I invite you to type any joys you wish to share into the group chat box. Joy at getting to hold the newest grandson. Joy for a college friend celebrating her birthday on Zoom. Celebrating with family today for an oldest daughter's 40th birthday. Child who just said her joy was, I love everybody in town. The joy of bike paths. Joy for a mother being able to get out after taking back the vaccines. Thankful for a husband's recovery from surgery. Celebration for a cousin who has overcome stage 4 cancer. A beautiful new supply of candles for a home chalice. A beautiful sunny day. Joy and gratitude for the new opening of a store in a new location. And joy for the beautiful blossom-filled spring this year. We hold these joys with gladness and celebration. May they be magnified because they are shared. Spirit of life and love, holy within and among us. Great silence. Boundless hope. Endless grief. In these, we hear the longing of our own heart. We hear the noise of brokenness and the loss from shame. We hear the need for connection and the cry for belonging. Spirit of life and love, great mystery, ultimate truth. We hold the struggle of imperfection. We grapple with the feelings of guilt. And we survive. May our vulnerability in this space bring us compassion. May loving kindness for ourselves and others heal wounds. And may the love of belonging bring us all to a life more wholehearted. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.
Fuente de amor, ven hacia mí, y al corazón cántale tu compasión. Sopla el volar, sube la mar, hasta moldear la justicia de la vida. Arraigame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí. Spirit of life, come to me, sing in my heart of the streams of compassion. Blow in the wind and melt ice in the sea. Move in the hand, giving light, shape of justice. Roots hold me, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Our first reading is from The Gifts of Imperfection by one of my favorites, Brene Brown. Wholehearted living is about engaging with our lives from a place of worthiness. It means cultivating the courage, compassion, and connection to wake up in the morning and think, no matter what gets done and how much left undone, I am enough. It's going to bed at night thinking, yes, I am imperfect and vulnerable and sometimes afraid, but that doesn't change the truth that I am also brave and worthy of love and belonging.
The mission of the First Unitarian Church of St. Louis continues even while our building is closed. Your donations contribute to keeping that mission alive even during the pandemic. One of the ways that we do that is by sharing the plate. This week, all non-pledged donations will be given to the Metropolitan Congregations United. MCU is a community organization that brings together religious congregations, community groups, and individuals in the St. Louis area to work toward a more equitable life for all residents, with a focus on racial justice. Recent programs in which First Church members are involved include Family Partners Campaign and Participatory Defense, which works with families of youth impacted by the justice system, and Get Out the Vote activities, especially around issues of justice, equity, and voter access. We are not passing a physical plate, but there are many ways to donate, including by mail, online, or by text. These are uncertain times. Please give as you can.
Well, one good thing about music, when it hits, you feel no pain. And when I stomp my feet and I clap my hands, I feel no shame. Oh Lord, won't you push music every day, Lord, every day. Lord, won't you hit me with some music every way, Lord, every way. Well, some folks like to make their own music, some folks like to plant their own seeds, and some folks like to stand on the backs of some other folks just to prove they're free. Oh Lord, won't you put some music every day, Lord, every day. Lord, won't you hit me with some music every way, Lord, every way. Yeah, you can read your Bible and you can read your Koran and you can read your Torah too. But your Messiah's been there all along, and every Christian, Muslim, and Jew, and there is too. Come on now, Lord, won't you put some music every day, Lord, every day. Lord, won't you hit me with some music every way, Lord, every way.
Woo! That was a wonderful one good thing. I feel like that was more than one good thing. That was several good things. Thank you, Daniel and Ralph, for that rousing good thing. I have been a Unitarian Universalist religious professional for almost 20 years. And one of the ongoing challenges that I encounter among folks is how to explain Unitarian Universalism to others. One of the habits that people fall into, myself included, is explaining what we are not or how we are different from other faith traditions. I myself have done this. My favorite joke about Unitarian Universalism is one I made up. Unitarian Universalists don't do guilt unless you forget to recycle. In reflecting on this joke, I've come to a few conclusions. One, I am not as funny as I think I am. Two, our relationship with guilt is much more complicated than we realize. And three, what we've been told in religious circles is guilt is actually shame. I had this realization while reading the work of Brene Brown, a social work scientist who researches courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. In Brown's work, she identifies a small but important difference between shame and guilt. Shame, she says, is I am bad. Guilt, she says, is I did something bad. Do you hear the distinction? I am versus I did. The problem, of course, is that we've been taught to translate guilt into shame. Shame is that little voice of self-talk that immediately tells us we aren't worthy. that our actions say something about our fundamental humanity. Whereas guilt is something that we can act upon. Brown says, I believe that there is a profound difference between shame and guilt. I believe that guilt is adaptive and helpful. It's holding something we've done or failed to do up against our values and feeling psychological discomfort. She continues, I define shame as the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Something we've experienced, done, or failed to do makes us unworthy of connection. I recently watched this happen in myself. Here's an example. In her old age, one of my cats is losing the ability to groom herself. Now, this may not seem like a big deal, but she is a long-haired cat, which means that this beautiful cat is now regularly covered in clumps of matted cat hair. After many wrestling matches with my cat, where I tried to comb them out, you're always going to lose those matches, I decided the best way to deal with them is to cut them out. Yes, the cat looks like she's encountered a hedge trimmer. One morning this week, I found a particularly large clump of matted fur, and in my haste to cut it out, I snipped without paying attention. And voila, snipped both fur and cat. It was a disaster. Realizing I had injured the cat, guilt flowed through me, and my thought process went immediately like this. Why hadn't I paid attention? Why hadn't I been more cautious? Why hadn't I just taken her to the pet groomer? Clearly, I was a bad cat parent. Holding my cat, I risked a look at the injury. How bad was it? Could I just treat it with Neosporin and not tell the vet and keep it a secret? What would the vet think? Obviously, I didn't deserve to have animals. Oh no, it's bad, really bad. I need to call the vet. I am the worst cat parent ever. Do you see how quickly that escalated? In a matter of minutes, I went from doing something bad to being bad. That is shame. The good news is that I called the vet and explained the situation. They took a look at my cat, and while she did need stitches, they explained that this type of injury is incredibly common in elderly cats who have very fragile skin. But I'm the worst cat mom ever, I wailed over the phone. You're not the worst cat mom. It even happens right here in the office, said the vet. It even happens right here in the office. In that moment, I was able to release my shame. I was not a bad cat mom. It was an accident. I was not unworthy of having pets. Yes, my guilt meant I would need to be more careful in the future and pay attention to what I was doing. But I was able to let go of the shame. I tell this story as an example of how quickly all of us go from guilt to shame, how shame wants to shut us down, and how we can stop shame in its tracks. In her research on shame, Brene Brown has found that the most effective way to deal with shame is to talk about it. Shame hates it when we reach out and tell our story, says Brown. It hates having words wrapped around it. It can't survive being shared. Shame loves secrecy. When we bury our story, the shame metastasizes. Without knowing I was doing so, I gave words to my shame. I was really tempted to make it a secret and to hide it. But I spoke them to a trusted person who was able to empathize with me and help me release the shame before it metastasized. Now, a story about accidentally injuring a pet is a small story about guilt and shame. Many of us have stories about guilt and shame that have been with us for decades and involve events and actions that have more impact than a beloved pet spending a day at the vet's office. However, all shame responds to sunlight in the same way. Our story for all ages today was a perfect example of what Brown is teaching. We need to speak about the things that weigh us down, and we need to do so with trusted friends and family. The reason is that we are all imperfect human beings who will make mistakes. We are all becoming. As Unitarian Universalists, our theology says that each and every one of us is worthy. That even when you make mistakes, you have inherent worth and dignity. We each are more than the worst thing we have ever done. As a minister, I am not interested in shame. I refuse to traffic in shame. If the purpose of church is to connect people with the holy, with what is true and ultimate in life, then shame gets in the way. There is no purpose in shutting people down and in making them feel less than. And if we shut people down, if we shame them, then they lose the adaptive benefit of guilt. Brene Brown suggests that there are moments when guilt can be useful. Guilt is the feeling we get when we have done something that goes against our values. And unlike shame, which says, I am bad, an action that is bad can be fixed, amended, or apologized for. Guilt is the feeling that invites us to live into our imperfect selves and do better next time. If we are imperfect beings in an imperfect world, then everyone else is struggling right along with us to live in a way that is wholehearted. In her research, Brown finds that the antidote to shame and guilt is wholehearted living, where we exercise compassion with ourselves and others, where we can be vulnerable and share the fears and shame that hide in the shadows, and where we can embrace the opportunities to be and do differently in the future. Mike read a quote earlier from Brown explaining wholeheartedness. I'm going to read it again. Wholehearted living is about engaging with our lives from a place of worthiness. It means cultivating the courage, compassion, and connection to wake up in the morning and think, no matter what gets done and how much is left undone, I am enough. It's going to bed at night thinking, yes, I am imperfect and vulnerable and sometimes afraid. But that doesn't change the truth that I am also brave and worthy of love and belonging. Friends, we are brave and worthy of love and belonging. We are each imperfect and beautiful in our becoming. There is a wisdom story by H. Norman Wright, in which 3 men each have sacks tied, one tied in front and one tied in back, that they carry with them. When the first man was asked what was in his sack, he said, "In the sack on my back are all the good things friends and family have done. In the front sack are all the bad things that have happened to me. Every now and then I stop, open the front sack, take the things out, examine them, and think about them." But he stopped so much to concentrate on all the guilt and all the bad stuff, he didn't really make much progress. The second man was asked about his sacks. He replied, "In the front sack are all the good things I've done. I like to see them, so quite often I take them out to show them off. The sack in the back, I keep all my mistakes back there and carry them all the time. Sure, they're heavy. They definitely slow me down. But for some reason, I can't put them down." When the third man was asked about his sacks, he answered, "The sack in front is where I keep all the positive thoughts I have about people, all the blessings I've experienced, all the great things other people have done for me. The weight isn't a problem. The sack is like sails of a ship. It keeps me going forward. The sack on my back is empty. There's nothing in it. I cut a big hole in the bottom. In there, I put all the bad things I can think about myself and hear about others. They go in one end and out the other. I'm not carrying around any extra weight at all." These sacks are not unlike the offalizer from our story earlier, a heavy weight that slows you down. The third man has learned the lesson of wholeheartedness, of countering shame and blame with love and belonging. In her book, The Gift of Imperfection, Brown lays out 10 guideposts to wholehearted living. They are like a coin, each with 2 sides, one practice to cultivate and another of things to let go of. The guideposts are: 1, cultivating authenticity and letting go of what other people think. 2, cultivating self-compassion and letting go of perfectionism. 3, cultivating your resilient spirit and letting go of numbing and powerlessness. 4, cultivating gratitude and joy, letting go of scarcity and fear of the dark. 5, cultivating intuition and trusting faith and letting go of the need for certainty. 6, cultivating creativity and letting go of comparison. 7, cultivating play and rest, letting go of exhaustion as a status symbol and productivity as self-worth. 8, cultivating calm and stillness and letting go of anxiety as a lifestyle. 9. Cultivating meaningful work and letting go of self-doubt and supposed to. And 10. Cultivating laughter, song, and dance, and letting go of cool and always in control. If this is not a list of spiritual practices, I really don't know what is. They are not easy, one and done on a checklist kinds of behaviors, but lifelong behavior changing practices. As a faith, Unitarian Universalists community means our theology has done away with shame. We are all worthy. Now it's time for us to do away with the rest of the behaviors that are holding us back. We do not need perfectionism. We do not need anxiety. We do not need numbing or scarcity or exhaustion or self-doubt. Judgment, need for certainty, and comparison do not help us. As we have lived through this pandemic, we have, however, learned the power of resilience, the wonder of creativity, and the benefits of joy and gratitude. We need more self-compassion, authenticity, rest, and calm. We need faith and meaningful work and laughter in order to survive. We need wholehearted living, and we can do it. So as the closing of my sermon today, I want to invite you into a litany of wholeheartedness with me. Mike is going to read the first line, and I will read the response. I invite you to stay muted, but to read the response along with me. Damien is going to put it up on the screen, and we will begin.
A Litany of Wholeheartedness by Dawn Shea Cooley. Because there have been times when shame has crushed our ability to be wholehearted.
We let go of who we ought to be and embrace who we are.
Because we have not always had the courage to be imperfect.
We let go of who we ought to be and embrace who we are.
Because we have struggled to have compassion for ourselves or others.
We let go of who we ought to be and embrace who we are.
Because we have been afraid of our own vulnerability.
We let go of who we ought to be and embrace who we are.
Because we are sometimes too scared to live authentically.
We let go of who we ought to be and embrace who we are.
Because we want to be wholehearted people, confident in our worthiness and our belonging.
We let go of who we ought to be and embrace who we are. May it be so. And because this work is not always easy, I invite you to join in our closing hymn, number 1015, I Know I Can.
Today
closing words in this time of pandemic come from the Reverend Nancy Reed McKee. Our community knows no boundaries. We are not confined by the physical limits of walls, or for that matter, of what often binds us, restricts us, holds us back. We are freer than we know when we release ourselves and each other from expectations of what is needed for true community. We are here together in this space. I see you. I hear you. I love you. Go in peace. Amen. And blessed be.